Shall we pray? Prayers, honorable members. Almighty God, we humbly beseech thee to look with favor upon this Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Grant that it may perform its high duty as in thy sight. Give divine guidance to the President of the Republic. Endow members of Parliament and ministers of state with discernment and vision, integrity and courage, that through the labors of government, this land and people may be well and truly served, and thy good purposes for the common human life be realized in our midst. Amen. O God, grant us a vision of our country, fair as it might be, a country of righteousness, where none shall wrong his neighbor, a country of plenty, where evil and poverty shall be done away with, a country of brotherhood, where all success shall be founded on service, and honor shall be given to the deserving, a country of peace, where government shall rest on the will of the people and the love for the common good. Bless the efforts of those who struggle to make this vision a living reality. Inspire and strengthen our people, that we may give time, thought, and sacrifice to speed the day of the coming beauty of Ghana and Africa. Amen. Honorable members, correction of votes and proceedings. Votes and proceedings of Friday, 9 February 2018. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10. Honorables, in the absence of any corrections, the votes and proceedings as presented are hereby accepted as true records of proceedings. Honorable members, statements. We have two statements, and we have agreed on the process whereby we'll take one from each side and then we'll move towards other business. The first stands in the name of Honorable Afeni on free senior high school education.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to make this statement on why free SHS must be taxed. Mr. Speaker, taxes are the income that the government receives from us, the citizens, to take care of our socio-economic needs. Therefore, if the political will is demonstrated as has been done by the current president, then in fact we should be assured that free SHS tax shall benefit the nation. Mr. Speaker, let me pay glowing tribute to President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for taking this bold step to implement the free SHS in his first year of government. This feat struck by the NPP is gradually positioning Ghana into the elite class of countries such as Finland, Denmark, Germany, Norway, etc., who provide free education up to the tertiary level for their citizens. Mr. Speaker, in commending the government for this great feat, I am not oblivious of the challenges that the program faces, particularly how to secure funding to ensure its continuity and sustainability. Mr. Speaker, while the Dalton Thomases of our time suggest it's too early to implement this free SHS program, the NPP think it is doable. Yes, it is not a rocket science, and even if it is, others have done it, so yes, it can be done. Mr. Speaker, I am however of the strong belief that funding regime for the free SHS in its current state must be changed from general funding arrangement through the consolidated fund to special and specific funding arrangement through taxation, purposely to fund the free SHS and beyond. As I indicated earlier in this statement, those countries implementing first-class free education have succeeded by taxing their citizens specifically towards the funding of education and other social services. Mr. Speaker, a great program like the free SHS, I believe, should not be left to survive on the consolidated fund where it will compete with others for funding. It requires a much more dedicated funding, just as we did for the NHIS and GET fund. This is the only practical way the policy will outlive its proponents and continue to provide the social benefits it envisaged to bring to the citizenry. Although the free SHS policy has come to stay, if the issue for the funding is not tackled head-on and properly streamlined, a time may come when a succeeding government may find a convenient way to dispose of the policy as a result of funding difficulties. In sounding this warning, Mr. Speaker, I am fortified in a statement recently made by the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, on the sustainability of the program when he said, and I quote, "We know those who have a record of scrapping pro-poor policies, nursing and teacher trainees will bear testimony. I wish to assure that the free SHS will be sustained, that free SHS is here to stay. The overwhelming majority of Ghanaians support the choice I have made in implementing free SHS," unquote. Mr. Speaker, it is against this possible backdrop that I want to propose to the government to take a further bold step by introducing special tax regime in addition to the voluntary fund to help fund the free SHS program. The Finnish, Norwegians, Germans, etc. have done it and now have first-class free education up to the tertiary level. Ghana can also do the same, Mr. Speaker. Following the above, I wish to propose possible special taxes to fund the free SHS as follows. 1. An increase in the VAT rate by 2%. 2. 1% on all mobile money transactions. And 3. Special tax of 1% on all imports. Mr. Speaker, below are some of the reasons why we need the tax to tax the citizens for free SHS. A. To sustain a program that the future of the country depends on, it is said that education is the backbone of a nation. It is also known that the youth make the chunk of Ghana's population. Free SHS means empowering the youth of Ghana to take up key responsibilities in industrialized society we seek to create, so as to extricate our society from the current Godisberg economy. The teeming youth will find well-paid jobs to do in the value chain of the various industries that will spring up, because a person educated to senior high school level is at least equipped to work in any non-technical or non-specialized environment. This will prevent our youth from going to seek greener pasture in countries like Libya to be exploited as illegal migrants. Not too long ago, Mr. Speaker, we were hit with a sad story of slave trade in Libya, a country in Africa. The story, though sad, tells us that the Ghanaian youth is desperate to succeed at all costs and must be given the necessary assistance to realize his or her dreams. One can imagine if all these desperate and zealous youth had the right mental orientation through senior high school education, what a great future lies ahead of us, Mr. Speaker. We indeed have to make sure the free SHS school education is a big success by introducing a special tax that will help us to sustain the laudable policy. B, money invested in free SHS in the long run comes back to the people, the citizenry. Quite a number of people look at free SHS as a burden to society. But if we carefully think through, Mr. Speaker, free SHS actually gives us far more than it will take from us in the form of taxes or money. In today's world, human capital is considered the best national resource. A person educated to the SHS level can explore better opportunities for himself on one hand, and on the other hand, the entire nation will benefit from his or her works. C, goodwill to pay free SHS tax. Mr. Speaker, the citizen will be willing to contribute a bit in the form of tax once the tax is dedicated to a policy with far-reaching benefits like the free SHS policy. The free SHS will equip the youth with specific skills and also something less tangible but more profound, impacting of knowledge, good judgment, intelligence, and wisdom. The introduction of tax has worked in the case of NHIS, Get Fund, and YEA, so it will work in SHS. I will admit that NHIS has had some challenges, but to a very large extent, Mr. Speaker, it has served Ghana well, especially the poor who otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford medical care but for the introduction of health insurance scheme. I conclude, Mr. Speaker, by saying that education is essential for every human being, and no meaningful development can happen without education. Unfortunately, it is not affordable for everyone, which itself obstructs the implementation of Article 38(2) of the 1992 Constitution, which requires the government to make SHS education accessible to all. Indeed, Article 25(1) compels government to make SHS education available and accessible by every appropriate means. Therefore, it is imperative, Mr. Speaker, to introduce a tax that will help the nation sustain the implementation of free SHS policy. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Afenimaki. Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the statement made ably by my good friend on the other side, Honorable Afenimaki, in respect of raising funds, as it were, to support the free SHS policy. Indeed, it's a policy that government had rolled out, which obviously has been seen and considered to be laudable, a policy obviously which indeed is pro-poor, a policy that by the stretch of one's imagination would definitely, if very well implemented, will actually give a lot of young people who hitherto may not have the opportunity of educating themselves to do so. Mr. Speaker, but then in considering this policy by government, which has been a very long-standing proposition by this current administration, even when they were not in government. We were told of how these things were going to be done. And the sources of funding at the time were propounded from very many theories were propounded as to how the SHS was going to be funded, because it was an issue that was raised by well-meaning people in this society. Civil society raised it, other political persons raised it, and we were told that it was doable and that there were going to be no hitches. Indeed, if we have come to this stage where we need to implement it and we are having problems, we must find innovative ways of actually addressing the challenge of funding. Mr. Speaker, it is true that in some other jurisdictions where some kind of free education is offered, there are ways of funding it necessarily, and they have been very innovative ways. Reference was made to Germany, but I believe strongly that in Germany it's not all based on taxes, where the very source where all the taxes are coming from is the same source that government goes back to raise money, as it were, to really address the issue of free education, where it be. And in many other jurisdictions also, we realize that the focus is now being on scholarships, Mr. Speaker, because the world is moving in a direction where the population growth and all, which is making it extremely very difficult to really give that kind of free SHS where everybody will have education without necessarily paying anything, and education not being a privilege. There's a shift and a move away from that, Mr. Speaker. This is because of the direction in which the world is moving, and because of the scarcity of resources the world over, and the increase in population. Mr. Speaker, if, for instance, every time we go to tax the people of Ghana, be it talk tax, be it communication tax, be it VAT, for various things, would we refer to that as free SHS? Mr. Speaker, when this government came into office, the finance minister, Honorable Ken Furiata, and Mr. Osafo-Maffo, the senior minister, did indicate or alluded to ways that they're going to deal with free SHS. Mr. Osafo-Maffo stated that the Heritage Fund will be used. Questions were raised by other political persons. Mr. Furiata had also stated in the budget statement that the government will use the annual budget funding amount to fund the free SHS policy. Mr. Speaker, the President himself, speaking at the 90th anniversary of Kobo Girls Senior High School, explained that instead of the revenues from our minerals, oil resources ending up in the hands of a few people, I am of the firm belief that the most equitable and progressive way of using these revenues is to educate and empower our population. Mr. Speaker, there have been various and varied comments as to how we should finance the free SHS policy. And I do recall very well, some time ago, even when Nana Addo, our president, was not president, but was flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, and he traveled abroad, on BBC he was questioned as to how he was going to fund SHS. Clearly, the funding of SHS, free SHS, is a dilemma. It has become a very tricky issue, and it's becoming an albatross around our neck. We have also realized that since the implementation itself, we have realized another monster that has confronted us, that is lack of infrastructure. Because clearly, if you do not have in place the adequate and the requisite infrastructure, and you say you are implementing free SHS, which is going to quadruple the numbers, you definitely will have problems. Must we therefore go back to the same regular sources of taxing the people? A lot of people will say that that is a very lazy way, unfortunately, of raising resources to address problems that confront the nation. After all, if we have been able to create the very many jobs that we promised the people of Ghana that we're going to create, that would have been an avenue, as it were, to show up even the revenue base. And for that matter, we can be able to tax the people a lot more. We said we were going to create 51 districts in last year. 51 factories last year in 51 districts. Mr. Speaker, if indeed that was able to take off, what that would mean is that the army of unemployed youth would have gotten opportunity to be employable and would have been in some employment, and they would have also be paying some taxes and will not necessarily be looking out for other ways of taxing the same persons. I would think, to my imagination, Mr. Speaker, that if indeed the proposition by my good friend has made out the statement is to be followed, then there will be a need for us to go back to the people and then find out from them indeed if this is the way they expect us to go. Apart from that, Mr. Speaker, the people are already complaining of the many taxes that they are sure were going to be reduced or removed. Mr. Speaker, at this time we are also talking about even electricity tariffs and all this is going out. And then again we go back to impose further punishment, further taxes on the people. Is that the way to go? I believe strongly that there can be innovative ways. And if we think outside the box, I'm sure that we can find ways of funding the free SHS and making it viable and making it very effective. There will be a need for us, in my view, that there must be a national stakeholders conference on the way to deal with the free SHS policy that we are implementing. We are already into it. We started it. We don't want it to end. We don't want it truncated along the line. And therefore, we must find a sustainable way of really funding it. And I don't think that the sustainable way of funding it will be further imposition of taxes on the Ghanaian people. I think that the way to go will be for us to hold a national stakeholders conference and deliberate on this matter, bring together the captains of industry, and then, tease minds and let people come up with suggestions which can be really innovative, which can also lead to some sustainability of where we get money to fund the free SHS, rather than talking about imposition of VAT. Already everything is about VAT. We are talking of imposition of imports and all that. Mr. Speaker, I don't think that is the way to go. I thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I did say we had agreed that there will be one from each side because of other business ahead of us. So in the absence of any person on my right. Yes, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. We have all listened to what has been put up, and the speaker of the maker of the statement did a real very good job by trying to let us remind ourselves of the benefits of this program, a very laudable program. And those of us who are here, we are here because we have been educated to a level that can bring us here. Those of us who are coming from very typical villages, can all attest to the fact that a lot of very brainy students have turned out to be, excuse me to say, Palm 1 typers because they didn't have the opportunity. I'm saying, excuse me to say, some of them have gone so low that if they had had the opportunity that we have, they will have been medical doctors, they will have been engineers, they will have been top personnel in government service, giving out a higher productivity to the country that we all dearly want to promote. If we sit here and recognize that there is a lot to gain by this free SHS policy, then funding it shouldn't be a topical argument. It is good to start along a line and then make sure you improve on whatever you have done and make the best out of it. The ultimate is that we should get all our people to the levels that we are. We should get all our people to the levels that we are. If not to our level, above us, or sometimes closer to us. Now, if we go back and look at the statistics, we realize that a lot of people have gone wayward because they didn't have the opportunities that the SHS program is offering to the people. So please, if we recognize that there are gains to be made, then let us take the funding of this SHS program more seriously. Now, Get Fund has been successful. NHIS has been successful. If there is a window to have an SHS fund, I think
it is in the right direction. Nothing small is not good enough for the task that we have ahead of us. And we should all put our heads together and roll behind the wheel. At the recent delivery by the finance minister, he even talked about voluntary contributions. And I can tell all of us, and we all attest to the fact that when we go back to our villages now, we are making contributions. We are making contributions towards this good goal. And there are a lot of people who are still prepared to give us more if the window is opened. And more people will be prepared to do this. There are a lot of us who went through hardships before getting the little qualification that we have had, and believe that the generations to come shouldn't be subjected to this manner of things that we went through. The business community are prepared. It is only that we're trying to put an adverse argument. I am telling you that there are a lot of companies that are offering scholarships. A lot of companies in Ghana here offering scholarships to their personnel. Some give study leave. Some give scholarship to their workers' children. They build schools for their people. Go to my village, and Newmont has built a school in one of the communities. Newmont, by building the school for the community, will be prepared to do a lot of these things. There are a lot of NGOs and Plan International. They build schools, put up orphanages, and we see this effort as a laudable effort to be helped or supported. Now also, looking at a stakeholders meeting, I believe that if we have a very good intention, we need not bring all and incur all costs before we move on a laudable road, because people will be prepared if the move is made. And therefore, we need not sit here and say that if we don't have a stakeholders meeting for people to come and drink coffee and cocoa, and then until that, there can't be any good thing done. We have a lot of good things we can do. As honorable members of this august house, we have good intentions for the people we represent. And so if we need to develop the people and bring them up to a level that is acceptable, please let us have a good standing on this and make sure that we can have a good funding that is sustainable and can support whatever has been started. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
This ends statement time. And we move on to the commencement of public business, item listed 4. Now this Honorable House thanks His Excellency the President for a message on the state of the nation which he delivered to Parliament on Thursday, 8th February 2018. Honorable Yao Buabin Asamoah. Leadership has agreed on 25 minutes for you, 20 minutes for a seconder. Honorable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I want to crave your indulgence to alter the business as set out on the order paper to allow for the laying of a regulation by the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources.
Thank you very much.
Talking about the Minerals and Mining Ground Rate Regulations 2018.
Thank you very much. Presentation of papers by the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. And Honorable Majority Leader is inclined to do so. Any objection? Honorable Majority Leader. Yes.
Speaker, we have no problem.
Very well. Honorable Majority Leader, you may please proceed.
Minerals and Mining Ground Rent Regulations 2018.
The paper is late. It's referred to the Committee on Minerals and Mining. on lands and natural resources. Thank you. Now, Honorable Majority Leader.
Speaker, this is regulations, so it must be referred to the Subsidiary Legislation Committee.
Very well, accordingly referred. Yes, Honorable Yawami Asamoah. We have 25 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this Honorable House thanks His Excellency the President for the message on the state of the nation which he delivered to Parliament on Thursday, 8th February 2018. Mr. Speaker, in moving the motion, I wish to recognize the still contested space of what the content of an address on the state of the nation ought to be. Article 67, under which the President is required to appear before this House, provides no parameters whatsoever. And I crave your indulgence to read, Mr. Speaker. Article 67 of the Constitution 1992. The President shall, at the beginning of each session of Parliament and before a dissolution of Parliament, deliver to Parliament a message on the state of the nation. What then, Mr. Speaker, ought to satisfy this House as an adequate message? Is it the breadth of vision? What goes into that? A historical panorama of the past, the present, and a vision for the future? Or maybe the timing of the address, where a president picks up from the previous government, reviews the inheritance received, and then determines that subsequent messages will track the vision that is put forward. Mr. Speaker, one needs to go back to the Constitution to look at these questions. And therefore, we go to Chapter 6, Mr. Speaker, of the 1992 Constitution, which is the principles, the directive principles of state policy. Mr. Speaker, Article 34(2) of the directive principles of state policy states as follows, and I quote, "The President shall report to Parliament at least once a year all the steps taken to ensure the realization of the policy objectives contained in this chapter, and in particular, the realization of basic human rights, a healthy economy, the right to work, the right to good health care, and the right to education." Mr. Speaker, Chapter 6 has 8 articles covering the entire arena of political, economic, and social governance. But Article 34(2) narrows down the options and offers some basic guidance. It focuses on the rule of law as reflected in its pursuit of basic rights, the economy, including employment generation, health, and education. However, it also, at the beginning, allows one to go across all the 8 articles. Right Honorable Speaker, I urge this House to accept that the address before the House responds to both Article 67 and 34(2) in all its ramifications. Indeed, as befits a veteran of this House and a political colossus like His Excellency Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, he has keenly demonstrated, including his very first address of the 21st February 2017, that he understands the content and the space for this. In that address last year, he said, and I quote, "To give a fair account of the state of our nation, I have to give an account of the state of our economy, of our governance, and of our national culture and attitudes." Perhaps more significantly, Mr. Speaker, demonstrating the urgency with which the President seeks to approach the task of nation building, His Excellency Nana Danko Akufo-Addo has complied with another mandatory requirement of this constitution under the same article, under the same chapter 6, Mr. Speaker. Under chapter 6, Mr. Speaker, 36(5). Article 36(5), and I quote, "For the purposes of the foregoing clauses of this article, within 2 years after assuming office, the President shall present to Parliament a coordinated program of economic and social development policies, including agricultural and industrial programs at all levels and in all the regions of Ghana." Within 2 years of assuming office. But Mr. Speaker, within 10 months of assuming office, His Excellency the President, who is in a hurry, has delivered the document referred to here, Mr. Speaker. It is titled the Coordinated Program of Economic and Social Development Policies 2017 to 2024, an agenda for jobs, creating prosperity and equal opportunity for all. Instead of 2 years, Mr. Speaker, our President has delivered in 10 months. In this document, Mr. Speaker, the President states that future messages on the state of the nation, and I want to emphasize it carefully, future messages on the state of the nation will be used to assess progress of implementation of programs in this document. So in other words, Mr. Speaker, not only has this House a full and comprehensive address by the Constitution, but true to his strong personality, adherence to principles, and courageous swashbuckling style, the President's actions have directly challenged this House to also use its full representative, deliberative, legislative, and oversight powers to match and track the vision of the President as it unfolds. In other words, Mr. Speaker, the President's hurry to confront Parliament with his documented vision way ahead of time is pregnant with opportunity to strengthen Parliament as we apply our constitutional powers to dissecting that vision and holding the President to it. Such a stance demands that Parliament works with one responsible accord with determination to serve the best interests of our constituents. But of course, it does not mean that the minority cannot put its foot forward, as it has already done in its alternative address to the state of the nation delivered to the public of Ghana. Arguably, however, Mr. Speaker, in the face of grave deficits, very grave deficits of institutional and constitutional governance, weak institutions incapable of dealing with waste, fraud, and abuse in the public space, it is imperative that going forward, this House deals with the big questions, with big solutions, in a bipartisan manner, because that is the only way we can raise the credibility of this House and justify the confidence of the people who voted us into this House. Partisanship is necessary, but on the core issues that impact this nation, we must rise above partisanship and deliver in a bipartisan manner, especially on the economy and issues of governance, Mr. Speaker. The President indeed observed in his address of 2017, and I want to quote him, "The conditions in our country demand that government machinery functions effectively and at full force, and that nothing is left on autopilot. The conditions demand that all of us, each and every one of us, tackle every task before us with speed and dedication." Mr. Speaker, they cannot be business as usual. We receive the address, we debate it, and we sweep it under the carpet. Mr. Speaker, the President is demanding that we work with speed and dedication to deliver the necessary for his vision to come into being. Mr. Speaker, I want to focus on some specific aspects of the address, and I will start with the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President addresses the constitutional balance between Parliament and the Executive, demonstrates awareness of the needs of the judiciary and other independent institutions of state with responsibility over the Executive. Indeed, the address gives us to appreciate and understand that budgetary allocations to these institutions are at their highest level ever. The address promises massive investments in the security services, especially housing, equipment, and personnel, which have been difficult for those services over the years. And more importantly, as we speak in the chamber this morning, the President has offered us the innovation of fighting corruption with the Office of the Special Prosecutor and seeks support to build new structures at local level with bold initiatives in decentralization. I want to address the two key issues: the Special Prosecutor and the election of DCs. Right, Honorable Speaker, all one has to do in this country is to say a government is corrupt and you are likely to topple the government. Most changes of government since independence, whether constitutional, authoritarian, or by junta, have always used corruption to one extent or the other. Violent and peaceful changes notwithstanding, attempts at fighting corruption have been only fair to poor up to now. The historical experience of the destructive influence of corruption is what drove the drafters of the Constitution to enshrine the fight against corruption in the Constitution. So if one goes to the preamble of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, we have it in there. The Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, in the name of God, we the people of Ghana. Then, in the fourth paragraph, we believe in freedom, justice, probity, and accountability. Then we go on to the same directive principles of state policy. And 35(8) of the directive principles is very clear. It states, the state shall take steps to eradicate corrupt practices and the abuse of power. I'll repeat it. The state shall take steps to eradicate corrupt practices and the abuse of power. Article 41 F says, to protect and preserve public property and expose and combat misuse and waste of public funds and property. 41J says, to declare his income honestly to the appropriate and lawful agencies and to satisfy all tax obligations. Mr. Speaker, the state demands that you and I fight corruption with all our strength, all our might, and all our will. Mr. Speaker, no wonder nearly 5 pages of the alternate state of the nation by the minority appears to find corruption within the new government. 5 pages. Whether it is true, whether it is far-fetched, as far as you can shout and scream and somehow make it stick in the public mind, then probably you're on the way to securing an election point. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, if this House is sincere about fighting corruption, then not only must we hail the president's nomination of long-standing fighter for corruption truth, lawyer, politician, man of conscience, Mr. Martin Abidu, but they must be seen to approve it quickly without impediment. What else could the president have done? What else could the president have done? It is unprecedented, Mr. Speaker. It is unprecedented in African politics that the single most powerful office beyond the government is headed by a person of an opposing ideology to the president. Right, Honorable Speaker, if for nothing at all, the president will be remembered for this singularly audacious move. The energy and prayer of this House, Mr. Speaker, if we rule well for clean governance, would be to offer the president our unalloyed support in his quest to sweep out corruption with an independent broom, irrespective of affiliation. The second issue, with respect to rule of law, Mr. Speaker, is the proposed election of DCs. Knowing the antecedents of the present system, where it comes from, I know it's going to be difficult to accept. And the operation has also achieved disciples who believe in it. So the naysayers will say change is dangerous. But change we must. Parliament will be the major beneficiary of any change because the emotive bond of a vote between you and those who elect you means that the burden of development is put on you without the resources which go to the unelected DC. Mr. Speaker, Act 936, which determines the membership, the duties, and the funding of district assemblies, only mentions the MP once, Section 5. And that's it. It mentions the MP as a member of the assembly with no voting rights. And that's it. Beyond that, the entire act forgets about the MP. So what indeed are you an MP doing in the local government within the district assembly? The attempt at equalization by giving MPs small funds labeled in various names, share of this district assembly common fund and all that, so that you can show up in the constituency. It's not only weak, it's also dysfunctional. Because how much can you deliver? How much can you deliver? So, Mr. Speaker, if we elect DCs, as His Excellency the President has told us, apart from defining an MP, if we elect MPs in multi-party elections, apart from defining the role of an MP.
Order, Honorable, you stand on the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I am surprised the honorable member is rather here to give or to deliver a speech with praises on the president instead of speaking to the document. That is my problem, Mr. Speaker. The honorable member should be guided. It is true. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, he should be guided. See? He is rather speaking as if he's giving a speech, showering praises on the president instead of speaking to the document. Mr. Speaker, I need your guidance.
Honorable member, you should know the guidance already. You are out of order. Honorable, go on.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much. His Excellency the President spoke clearly about going to the nation to conduct a referendum.
Honorable, please proceed.
I'm very grateful, Right Honorable Speaker. His Excellency the President needs our support. Mr. Speaker, if MPs are elected, if DCs are elected, there will not be mere passengers at the state level anymore. Our roles in this House will be better defined. Our roles in this House will be better defined. And I argue that the small funds that are used to attempt to make you show up in the constituency can be used to support you to deliver better quality services in pursuit of your core functions in this House. Right, Honorable Speaker, let me now turn to the economy. Article 36 of the Directive Principles of State Policy deals directly with the economy. Indeed, the admonition in Article 36(2) bears stating, and it says, the state shall, in particular, take all necessary steps to establish a sound and healthy economy. I repeat, the state shall, in particular, take all necessary steps to establish a sound and healthy economy. The emphasis, Mr. Speaker, is on sound and healthy. As the President's take on the economy shows, in the short space of 1 year, the valiant efforts of the President's economic management team has put this economy back on the way to very good health. Right. Who better to endorse this remarkable achievement than the institutions who matter when it comes to economic performance in our part of the world? After all, where did the minority seek policy credibility when they were in dire straits? The World Bank. So, Mr. Speaker, the World Bank of the Daily Graphic of Thursday, January 8, 2018, page 28, Mr. Speaker, and I beg your permission to quote, but a year after the government of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo took power, fiscal credibility, a recovery in credit growth, and expansion outside the resources of industry mean that the country's standing isn't just a result of growth slowing in Ivory Coast and Ethiopia. A recovery in fiscal space and credit growth in 1 year. Mr. Speaker, Bloomberg and other experts also have this to say. Investors will look to see if Ghana can maintain financial discipline after years of chronic overspending. Years of chronic overspending. The economy, and let's listen to this carefully. The country turned to the IMF for an almost $1 billion bailout in dollars in 2015, as spiraling debt and high inflation pushed the cedi into free fall. After the budget deficit ballooned to more than 9% of gross domestic product. Mr. Speaker, in those years, when the economy fell ill, we all know which side of the house was in charge. Mr. Speaker, as we sit here, inherited inflation of 19.2% has slowed in record time, a year, to a little over 11%. This has driven interest rates down with a dramatic fall in lending rates from between a band of 36% to 39% to about 26% to 29%, thereby doubling credit to the private sector. And we have seen GDP grow from a 3-decade low of 3.6% as of December 2016 to 7.9%.
5 minutes. Honorable, let me continue. 5 minutes more. Honorable,
Mr. Speaker, for the record, my colleague who is moving the motion is talking of inherited inflation of 19.2%. Mr. Speaker, all that I know is that for the records, the inflation figure that was handed over to me was 15.4. And it was not 19.2. You should set the records straight, because everything is being documented.
Honorable, we may continue.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me quickly dwell on the need for reliable statistics in our economy. Mr. Speaker, even though we are headed in the right direction, we all believe that we have a difficulty with statistics. Objective, incontrovertible statistics. So the president said in this room that figures don't lie, and yet the minority found a way of justifying all the debt figures, all other figures in their minority state of the nation to the world. We need to retool that part. Otherwise, measurement of progress becomes apocryphal. One says it's half full, the other says it's half empty. We need to also beef up the private sector. Targeted identification. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we need to applaud the tenacity, honesty, and impartiality of the president with respect to the environment. Knowing very well the dangers of confronting illegal mining, His Excellency has reiterated his commitment to fighting galamsey, even at the risk of his political future.
Honorable Dinabo.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, this is a House of Record, and our colleague mentioned 19% as the rate of inflation at end of year 2016. Mr. Speaker, I refer to the budget presented to us by the Honorable Minister of Finance. Paragraph 63 of the budget. Mr. Speaker, end period inflation for 2016 was 15.4% against a target of 10.1%. 19% cannot find this way. Mr. Speaker, I therefore plead with you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I therefore make a passionate appeal to you that the honorable member is made to withdraw that figure of 19%. We can't allow 19% to go in our records because, Mr. Speaker, that is not the end of your inflation. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.
If you are talking about two competing figures at the appropriate time, you will well make reference to it, and then we shall verify accordingly. Will you please be patient? Because both will be part of the... That is what exactly should be done. There's plenty of opportunity to contradict a figure with another competing figure. And people will be able to draw their conclusions from that statement, if accurate. Honorable, now you will conclude.
Mr. Speaker, March 2016.
Yes, Honorable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I have listened to your ruling and I believe we should go along with it. However, Mr. Speaker, I think we should make a distinction between end-year inflation and inflation, the average inflation for the year. There's a world of difference. There is a world of difference between end-year inflation and the average for the year.
Right Honorable Speaker, with your permission, I will seek to point them to the statistics of the Ministry of Finance.
Honorable, your concluding remarks, please.
Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, this House has power. The power to represent millions, Mr. Speaker. The power to deliberate on behalf of millions, Mr. Speaker. The power to legislate and bind those millions to what we legislate. And Mr. Speaker, the power to oversee and protect the rights of those millions who have voted us into this House. Mr. Speaker, let us use that power to balance executive authority, check executive authority effectively, and support the delivery of the vision of the President for enhanced economic growth, social development, and better entrenchment of rule of law. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
Honorable Lafayette Moko, to second the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to second the motion. ably moved by my brother on the other side, the Honorable Yabuabian Samuel. Mr. Speaker, in doing so, I want to say that my brother sought to define to this House the essence or the parameters for the State of the Nation's address. But I do not think that what goes into the State of the Nation's address is in doubt at all. Mr. Speaker, what are we talking about? The government came to this House on Monday, 31st July 2017, through their mid-year fiscal policy review of the 2017 budget statement and economic policy. Mr. Speaker, in this policy review document, a lot of economic policy positions were canvassed. And therefore, at the end of the year, we were hoping that His Excellency the President will tell us the review that they undertook and what actually happened at the end of 31st December 2017. Mr. Speaker, if I may refer to particularly paragraph 169 under capital market development. Mr. Speaker, it says, over the past 6 months, we have started the process of lengthening and normalizing the yield curve, lowering benchmark interest rates, and pursuing microeconomic stability to position the capital market for growth. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, 2 banks collapsed within the year. His Excellency did not touch on that. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, the cedi has depreciated so much against the international currency, especially the dollar, to the extent, Mr. Speaker, to the extent that today the cedi to the dollar is at 4.8. 4.8. Then you are not in this country. Mr. Speaker, may I further refer you to paragraph 153 of the same policy document, Mr. Speaker, and it states, and it's on page 33, Mr. Speaker, it says that under the government's industrial transformation agenda, the implementation of the one district, one
Honorable Minister, do you rise on a point of order or correction?
Mr. Speaker, a point of correction. Mr. Speaker, my colleague opposite me here just made a very serious statement about the collapse of 2 banks. And he makes a categorical statement that 2 banks collapsed this year. One was last year.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, I want my colleague to explain to us, clarify, what constitutes a collapse of a bank. That is factually incorrect. We only announced what had happened during their time. The banks never collapsed in 2017. They collapsed earlier. But you hid the fact from the public of this country. So you shouldn't come and tell us that the banks collapsed this year. Do you know the processes we go through? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable, you may continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, paragraph 153 of the same policy document, Mr. Speaker, is to the effect that under the government's industrial transformation agenda, for instance, the government will implement the One District, One Factory initiative, and therefore a program of implementation framework which says the modalities of implementation has been prepared. To date, the technical support group for the program has already reviewed a total of 234 business plans, received for the One District, One Factory initiative. About 59% of these applications are from the manufacturing sector, whilst 33% are from the agribusiness sector. It is envisaged that the more than 50 districts will start actual implementation of their enterprises by the end of the year, with the potential to generate 80,000 direct and indirect jobs. Mr. Speaker, we were expecting His Excellency the President to tell us that when they said that 50 districts will start actual implementation of these enterprises, how many actually did it? He was missing his address, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, may I touch on employment?
Honorable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I've been on my feet for close to 5 minutes. And it is now that you are recognizing me. Mr. Speaker, I will not fight you. Others, when they get up and you are not recognizing them, they begin to fight you. Mr. Speaker, that indeed is a difference. And Mr. Speaker, my colleague is on his feet to second a motion. Mr. Speaker, now he's critiquing what the mover of the motion has said. We may want to know from him whether he's seconding the motion or not. Mr. Speaker, there are rules. Can people listen? Can people listen, please? Mr. Speaker, there are rules in this house. If a person moves a motion and you will rise to second it, it means you concur with what he has said. Yes, that is the rule. Mr. Speaker, unless anybody can point our rules, everything different from what I'm saying. So if you are not concurring, with respect, you may resume your seat for somebody to second, and then you come in. You cannot rise to disagree, with the mover of the motion. As simple as that.
Honorable Member, you may simply resolve the issue. I rise to second the motion to start. And in doing so, you can say what you like. Please, thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I am
so honorable. Reformulate. Let's make room.
very well. Mr. Speaker, I have indeed stated that I rise to support the motion and indeed to second the motion. But in doing so, I will say the following.
In doing so, no.
Yes. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your guidance. So, Mr. Speaker, I am saying that even though, yes, the motion as moved by my able brother should be seconded, it is essential that we point out certain things.
Proceed.
Indeed. So, Mr. Speaker, I am further saying that, for instance, under employment, the president, when earlier in the year, he met the media and stated his policy position for the past year and his policy position for this year, he made it categorical that he couldn't tell us the number of employment they generated as a government. And so we were hoping that when he got the opportunity on the 8th of February 2018, he would have gathered his figures to be able to tell us how many jobs his government, considering importantly that he rode to office on the back of creating jobs and employment for the youth in this country. But he did not. Mr. Speaker, the only thing he spoke about was about the fact that they intend to implement a policy that will generate about 3,000 jobs. Mr. Speaker, for the creation of 3,000 jobs, that is even here to be done. What happened in 2017? That is what we are interested in, because that is the year under review. Mr. Speaker, the issue about 745,000 jobs came up within the agri sector. Mr. Speaker, but I am saying that, for instance, even in my district, South Dine, I have gone round and I have not seen any new farmer who has come to join the group of people who farm as a result of the introduction of this new policy. So how come we can say that new people have been given the opportunity for jobs within that subsector? Mr. Speaker, these are very, very important matters. Mr. Speaker, we are also saying that indeed in one of the policy documents, the document states to the effect that they have created employment for so many people within the National Youth Employment Agency, for instance. But Mr. Speaker, what has happened is that persons who are already serving in these areas were dismissed and new persons were recruited. So indeed, we have not succeeded in creating jobs. We have only succeeded in replacing one Ghanaian with another. So we're just marking time. And so we cannot count that as creating jobs because others within the economy also lost their jobs. Mr. Speaker, I will touch on the judiciary. Mr. Speaker, the judiciary is a very, very important organ of government. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the president carefully and I didn't hear the policies that he implemented towards improving the judiciary and the infrastructure that survive within the judicial space in this country. Mr. Speaker, I was hoping to hear from the president that, for instance, they built about 10 courthouses in so and so and so areas, thereby improving access to justice delivery to the ordinary people in this country. I didn't hear anything like that. For instance, I didn't also hear that the government recruited a certain number of magistrates or circuit judges or high court judges within the year 2017. And Mr. Speaker, these are very, very important matters that should reflect in the State of the Nation's address and the coming years. Mr. Speaker, so I think that being a member of the Judiciary Committee of this House, the judiciary faced serious challenges. Indeed, when we met the new Chief Justice, she has drawn out a policy of going around the entire country to assess the state of the infrastructure of the courthouses in this country. And she's done that. And so we're hoping that the president would have stated the things that he did to improve that and the things that he intends to do for the coming year. They were all missing in his State of the Nation's address. And so the judiciary, nothing for them, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately. Mr. Speaker, I'll touch on education. Mr. Speaker, I won't speak about free secondary school education. I won't.
And we're getting ready to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will speak about the situation prevailing in the tertiary institutions. Mr. Speaker, the universities and the colleges of education and the university colleges are beginning to churn out the application forms at exorbitant fees. And I was hoping that as the president is fighting to bring free or to make access to secondary education free or at the secondary level, he will be paying attention to the economic bar that is gradually being created at the tertiary level. Mr. Speaker, it will come to naught when you have free access to secondary education and after that, because of economic reasons, you are unable to access tertiary education. And I was hoping that this will reflect in the State of the Nation's address. I didn't see it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll touch on the road sector by way of conclusion. And Mr. Speaker, I'll refer you to the 2018, the budget statement and economic policy. Mr. Speaker, I will refer you to paragraph 536 on page 101. Mr. Speaker, it says that in 2018, some of the key roads program for continuation include construction of bridge on the Volta River at Volivo, in Sawam Apejwa Road, Kwafo Krum and Apejwa Road, Tamale Yendi Road, Bogatanga Boku, Pomakum Road, in Kwanta Otidamungo Road, Mr. Speaker, a litany of roads were cited as due for continuation. But Mr. Speaker, interestingly, the same number of roads were also stated in 2017 for continuation. Mr. Speaker, I was hoping that His Excellency, the President, will tell us the extent of work that have been done on this road, because we know, for instance, in my constituency, the Eastern Corridor, the contractor has been asked to go, and the road is in abeyance. And Mr. Speaker, we speak of the state of the nation's address. So the state of affairs is what we ought to be told, and not the declaration of intentions of things you intend to do. That is not what is supposed to reflect in the state of the nation's address. Mr. Speaker, I will conclude by saying that yes, I support the motion as ably moved. I second the motion as ably moved by my brother, and that the motion should be subjected to a thorough debate in this House for approval. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for so ably seconding the motion. Honorable members, the motion is now for discussion. Honorable Afenyamaki. Honorable Majority Leader.
Speaker, I guess we can take an adjournment at this time and then come to continue tomorrow. Speaker, as you are aware, the honorable member for Winneba is programmed to leave Ghana for ECOWAS Parliament's business early tomorrow morning. So the application was submitted that he makes his contribution. Unfortunately, he's left the chamber. And, Mr. Speaker, that being the case, I guess we can take an adjournment so he forfeits his place, and then we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.
We agree on the formal moving and seconding plus one on each side to continue tomorrow, if all being well. Therefore, Honorable, I think in line with our earlier discussions, Speaker, is an appropriate time to leave. We also know of other assignments, committees that are at work, and a few other issues.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even though that was agreed upon, and I think the ECOWAS issue was also raised, and today being a special day, because the Public Accounts Committee is meeting in Tamale, Local Government Committee has also invited some district assemblies to meet them in the committee rooms. The Appointment Committee is also meeting to vet the nominee for the Special Prosecuting Office. So clearly, a lot of committees are sitting concurrently as we are sitting here. And therefore, if the leader of the House has indicated that the motion has been moved and seconded, so we adjourn and reconvene tomorrow to begin thorough debate on the motion, Mr. Speaker. I think it is a step in the right direction, so I will not defer at all.
Majority Leader, respectfully, have you formally moved? You will do so.
Speaker, I move that we adjourn until tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's removed.
Thank you very much. Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I second the motion for adjournment.
Honorable members, the motion for adjournment has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. This honorable House is adjourned to tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock in the forenoon. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, in the critiques of the honorable nominee, he indicated that the establishment of the Office of Special Prosecutor, Special Prosecutor Office as a body corporate, only serves to add another bureaucratic layer to the prosecutorial authority of the AG. He went on to say that the AG office is seriously understaffed and underfunded, and that the budget will be burdened further with the creation of the office in issue. Are those views still relevant, especially when the clause 1 of the bill you critiqued was maintained in the Act as Section 1?
Mr. Chairman, as you call it,
I don't know whether you have your copy here.
my papers are many, but go ahead.
Yes. I want us to start with Section 71 on plea bargaining. There are various provisions on plea bargaining under Section 71 of the Act 959. If I may be permitted to read just some aspects of it. 71.1 says, a person under investigation or charged with corruption or a corruption-related offense may voluntarily A, admit the offense and make an offer of restitution, or B, admit the offense and offer to provide information that will aid in the arrest and prosecution of other persons whom that person knows have committed or about to commit corruption or a corruption-related offense. Now, the special prosecutor is given more or less a blank check as to whether to accept the offer of restitution or consider if the offer is acceptable to the prosecution, even though eventually the court may come in. If you look at 71.4, in considering whether the offer is acceptable, you are required to look at the history, level of cooperation, willingness, likelihood of obtaining a conviction, etc. One, what's your general opinion about this provision? And two, how do we prevent abuse under this provision?
Mr. Chairman, we should go back and look at the offenses the special prosecutor can prosecute. Out of the 10 offenses listed with the general provision that other offenses, 6 of them are misdemeanors, 2 are felonies, 2 are unclassified. So for me, the issue is not necessarily wanting to fill in Sawam with people. One of the issues of prison administration is to reduce the number there so that we don't spend money feeding people whom we shouldn't feed. So I see this plea bargaining thing as a good incentive for those who want to make reparation for the consideration of the court and go and sin no more. The office will have to take into consideration all the grounds upon which reparation must be accepted. And the reparation must be reasonable, because the reparation eventually will come to the knowledge of the people of this country. Even though we can't ask all of them questions, in doing that, our minds will be tuned to what is reasonable. And when we get something which is reasonable, the court will endorse it. And we are hoping that if we can get monies back, what's the use imprisoning him when you can't get the money back? If he agrees to get the money back only for a conviction and probation, I think that is better for the nation than imprisoning him 10 years, feed him 10 years, give him prison clothing, and then he may have, if he is grown, he will have
chronic conditions, and you'll be sending him to hospital up and down, and the president may be compelled to give him an early pardon. So if he will bring part of the money or all of it back, and it's reasonable. That is the thing I love about this section. So that those who think that the office is just going to be there, locking people left, right, and center, will realize that the office will act reasonably. And it's only cases which is in the national interest after investigation to prosecute, that to be prosecuted. But when people realize they are false and say, me akulupa, through my fault, through my most grievous fault, please, I will pay reparation. Why not? I mean, even God forgives, let alone we. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now the second question will be on Section 77, Mutual Legal Assistance. The section says the Mutual Legal Assistance Act 2010, Act 807 applies. With your experience as Attorney General, for a long-standing experience, Deputy Attorney General, I'm sure you are aware that this section is to look at how persons in public office may want to send their assets abroad, including funds. With your experience, how do you think we can benefit from this?
We can benefit enormously from this. You know, there is an international something on politically exposed persons. And if you even open an account in certain countries like the UK and America, they ask you to fill a declaration of consent that if questions are asked about you, the bank is at liberty to provide them. Right? So mutual legal assistance gives us the opportunity for those who think they are smart enough to put their monies and go through the Kotoka International Airport because they are exempted from very critical screening and deposit them abroad. We will trace them, right? And then they will have to decide whether they will come and pay reparation or bring the money back, or we deal with it. I don't want to talk. I was Minister of Interior, so I know the security and intelligence methods of doing it. We will use these methods. So those who think that they've hidden something abroad, maybe they don't need to approve me. Because if they do, I will find it. I have the capability, I've done it before, and under my if you approve me, it will be done.
Thank you. Last question, Mr. Chairman. Yes, back to the Act. I notice under Section 80, consequential amendments, that indeed Section 54 of the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act has been amended. And in amending, it says where the special prosecutor enters a nulli prosequi under subsection 1, the special prosecutor shall state reasons for doing so. What would you say about this? What's your observation here?
Well, this is what Parliament has said. Normally, when you enter nulli prosequi, you do. When the Attorney General enters nulli prosequi, it doesn't state reasons. But this Honorable Parliament decided that maybe the special prosecutor must be able to explain why he's entering it. He might have taken some cut and wants to withdraw it. So pin him to give a reason so that if it's not reasonable, the public will know. The mistake is that it hasn't stated that the special prosecutor cannot withdraw a case he's prosecuting. You know, you can withdraw the charge, which is almost the same as a nulli prosequi. But you see, the Act goes for nulli prosequi and left the other hand. You know, so there's that lacuna, which maybe in due time we will have to consider what we really want.
Right. I was going to ask you, do you think that we should add even withdrawal of a charge to?
I think it is cumbersome, you know, because if you bring a charge and then you realize that there's no evidence to convict, why will you, look, in the first place, to charge a person, is to put the fellow under stress, his family under stress, right? He has to go to expense to hire a lawyer to defend himself. The state has to expend money on the trial. A judge will have to sit. Prosecutors will have to be assigned, right? So if you start prosecuting, and then it shows that some of the witnesses perjured themselves, right, or their evidence is not maintainable, why do you waste state funds to continue? You should be able to withdraw. If your hands are tied and you want to continue, you continue, you'll be convicted, and the state loses more. So I think that it is good for every prosecutor to have the ability to withdraw, because you see, that discretion has principles that govern it. You don't look for victims. You look for people who have committed offenses contrary to the national interest. So I don't think we should put it in law. Even for me, this whole thing about giving reasons for nulli prosequi, well, it's there, so we will follow it. Otherwise, I would have thought that the original position should have stood. But once it's in the law, it must be obeyed.
Very well. Obi, you are done. No, I had promised Honorable Helu after, and I'll get to you. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations, nominee. You were an active member of NDC, and actually in the year 2000, you were vice presidential candidate. I'd like to know whether you are still a member of NDC. And if you are, what are your views about the appointment of a special prosecutor whose political coloration is well known? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman. If you read Section 3 of the Criminal Offences Act, the definition of a public officer includes a potential public officer. So when the president nominated me and announced it to the whole world, I became a potential public officer, recognized under the criminal code as a public officer. So as far as I'm concerned, since that day, I'm neutral. That's why you've not heard my voice over the air saying anything, because I'm coming to an office which has to be neutral and impartial. Yes, I have been a leading member of the NDC. I will never regret it. That was my contribution towards national development. But I have been nominated. That I'm a potential public officer. From that day, I have to maintain neutrality. That is what I'm maintaining. If you approve me and I'm sworn in, then I'll even be more bound. There have been many things that has gone on, I would have replied. But because of my neutrality, I've been gagged. The president gagged me since 11th of January, you know, and when I become special prosecutor, if there's anything I dislike, I can't write about it. That's the cost.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really want to know from you whether he has resigned from NDC or he's still a member.
Mr. Chairman, one doesn't need to resign. The Supreme Court has held that while you are a public officer, you cannot take part in party politics. I think it involved Dr. Ajay and Co. I did that case in the Supreme Court. So I don't need to. No, even when you are a potential public officer, you are supposed to exhibit neutrality. So I don't need to make a formal resignation of anything. It's by operation of law.
Okay, we are interested in knowing if you still hold a membership card of NDC.
Mr. Chairman,
hold on. Won't you want to do another one? Well, the answer won't change. And the point he's making is that by operation of law, he is not enabled to identify with any political party. Whether he holds a card as dated yesterday or not is another matter. So if I were you, I'll ask another question.
and I hope it's not a question. These are all follow-ups to the first question. Yeah, they were follow-ups. So
I promise to be flexible, but not this lengthy process, please.
Follow-up. Yes, I know that the nominee has written many articles, and I hope that you remember this particular one. The title of the article is Amidu vowed to Mills to ensure that the government complied with the 1992 Constitution, dated 14 August 2017. He was purported to have said that, and I quote, "It is against my northern custom for anybody to invite a senior brother's wife and wants the junior brother to implicate her in her presence." The quotation goes on, and he says, "Call me ethnocentric, but I was born in the northern region, in the northern territory, sorry." These are very profound statements and suggestive to me and to many people that there could be possible bias if your appointment is approved, possible bias on your part in dealing with issues that concern family, tribe, ethnic groups, and so on. So can you just explain to us what the situation is?
Mr. Chairman, I was reacting to a situation where young people who didn't know historical facts were making accusations. So, and I didn't want to state all the facts. So I gave an inkling into what took place. To say that I am from the Northern Territories and somebody's wife, my brother's wife, these are matters of fact. And nobody can take away from me the fact that I was born in the Northern Territories of the British Protectorate. Nobody can take away the fact that this country became Ghana when after the plebiscite. They are facts, but we are Ghanaians and we are learning to build a nation. We don't throw away custom. It is custom that makes our identity. And I'm saying that you can never get me to tell you about my brother's wife in her presence when I have written to you officially and mention her name. That's all it's about. That doesn't depict bias. I have written a whole letter. Mama Ayarga, the Honorable Mama Ayarga, when he was on about it, I gave the letter and he was invited to a friend's house to read it. Right? He knows I mentioned all the names. So when he called me and wanted me to say it, I didn't think it was prudent. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't make me biased when I've named the name in a letter. And then you call me before the fellow. Is this the fellow you mean? I mean, what is that? It doesn't make me biased. If it were making me biased, I wouldn't have written officially in my capacity as Attorney General, naming names. So I can't be biased. I am fair. Even if you are my brother, I will deal with you if you breach the law, even if I have to hire a lawyer for you.
We thank the nominee for that assurance. We shall be looking up, watching critically to ensure that there is nothing to show ethnicity, because we are all against that kind of
Honorable Helu, that's your last opportunity.
Oh, I have one more.
No, it's actually
It's follow-up.
Please, this is the fifth question you're asking. So two are follow-ups, but please, this is your last question.
Yeah,
please
the last
proceed.
one. The last one is about, it's taken from his critique of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Bill. And in it, he said that I am fortified in the belief that the attempt to pull a fast one on Ghanaians by the insertion of clause 3(4) of the bill to negate the fight against corruption is the work of a strong and powerful cabal within the government. I hope he remembers that. We want to know, maybe you might not mention this, but who are these powerful cabals? And how do you intend to counteract the activities of this powerful cabal? within the government. Because if these people are so strong to even influence the bill to their advantage, you are going to a position where these people still will may have a leeway. How are you going to deal with this cabal? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was writing upon credible intelligence. You know, intelligence is not necessarily evidence. And I'm happy that because of the manner in which I wrote it, civil society were able to convince Parliament to remove the fact that we are only to prosecute, or the special prosecutors prosecute only corruption of a certain magnitude. So that when somebody steals plantain, he can go for 5 years. And yet when somebody takes 200,000 for a bribe, he can walk away. I think I achieved that objective. If anybody, I've said it time with that number, commits a corruption offense, he will not be, I will not see him as a member of a political party. I will see him as a suspected criminal. Pure and simple. And that's how I would deal with the fellow. Crime is crime, and the president repeated it. Crime is crime without political correlation. And that is how the office will be dealt with, will be supervised if I am approved. Indeed, as I've said, the fact that you know me, if you come to talk to me about it, I may order your arrest, because under section 239, trying to directly or indirectly influence the special prosecutor as a public officer is corruption. Many Ghanaians don't know that. So we'll try to be as impartial as possible, as humanly as possible. We are going to try to be the moral compass, and will be the gatekeepers, so that nobody will say the ask is casting one way. You know, so the best thing is, if the office is set up, stop it. If you don't stop it, and the law gets with you, and it's so serious in the national interest to prosecute you, and you don't offer to say I've sinned, I will pay, who will prosecute you? I hope I've answered your question.
Very well. Now, Honorable Minister for Defense.
Thank you very much.
Take the Minister of Defense.
Don't create more trouble. First of all, let me thank the nominee. I think I've been listening to him this morning, and to me he appears very consistent with his views. So let me congratulate you first on your nomination. Your nomination was one of the things that, apart from maybe football and the military, that received the broad support of every Ghanaian. And so I think that it was very good for me and for you and for the people of Ghana that this novel and uncharted waters, your nomination received a lot of support. Even though some people had issues with it, I'll leave that to their conscience. But there's just this little issue that I wanted you to correct, but I will not ask you to correct. I'll just listen to me and then I'll move on with my questions. It has to do with a joke that we all thought was permissible in Ghana, the Bunsa way. Until this morning, I thought it was very permissible. In fact, I've used it several times. If I was not in this vetting, I may have used it on somebody else. It could have created a problem for me. So I thought it was really a joke that normally Ghanaians, especially widows from the north, would joke. I know that halfway in the same district is generated in one of the schools, the Busa way and that kind of stuff. So really, I thought it was a joke until this morning. Maybe you were also joking, so I'll leave it at that. But, Mr. Chairman, like I said, the Gadis have and Fireflies have this dog thing they always fight about, and Concombers and the Mobes, the B-Mobes, that British Mobile have this issue of cowtail, this man. Gonjas and Fireflies. I always thought that it's like that, but I'll leave it at that. And maybe one day we'll talk about it over a pot of pito. But, Mr. Chairman, let me read a quotation from one of his papers. I want to know whether it is attributable to him before I ask a question. it is a quote. The Constitution has clearly delineated the type of public officers who shall be appointed by the President with the approval of Parliament. Public officers in the category of special prosecutor do not fall under that category. It is unconstitutional for Parliament to partake in the approval, and it is the exclusive appointment powers of the President. Is it really something that you wrote and you stand by it now, that you think that Parliament should not vet you and that only the President should do that?
I wrote it in the 25-page critique. It is there, and if you remember, at the beginning, I answered the question myself by saying that I raised it with the President because Parliament was now requiring that the fellow should be of the same conditions as a Court of Appeal judge and be subjected to Parliament, approval by Parliament. And then the issue was, should we throw away the dirty water with the baby? And I said, it is, for me, with the President's own commitment, it was more important to fight the canker than to worry about principles of constitutionality, particularly when the President had called my attention to the fact that once Parliament had passed it, which I knew myself, until the Supreme Court declares it unconstitutional, that is the law. I agreed with him entirely. And I have said to this House that I didn't want anybody to think that it was because I may be afraid of vetting. That was why I wrote it. That's why I'm subjecting myself to your vetting. It wasn't, I was writing this as a matter of constitutional law, which I thought. But Parliament thought otherwise. The President is not the Supreme Court. I am not the Supreme Court. As I indicated, President Trump minuted that a law he was signing was unconstitutional, yet he signed it.
Thank you very much. That was your view. Maybe that's not your view today, so let's move on. Parliament has thought otherwise, so you are complying with it. The other issue, Mr. Chairman, that I wanted the nominee to look at is the current practice that we have in Ghana of newspaper trials. When somebody is accused of any crime, whether it's corruption, it's particularly corruption, the investigative bodies leak, let me use that word, leak the information to the press for the person to first be tried in the newspapers. By the time the person goes to court and have his say, he's totally destroyed. His credibility is gone. In fact, some people have collapsed. Some may have even died, and some have never recovered from the fact that they are prosecuted in the newspapers, they are maligned and insulted. At the end, they are free. But they have no name any longer. They have no credibility any longer. I want to ask you, if this House recommends you, and you are approved by the main House, if this committee, and you are approved by the main House and ultimately sworn in by the President, what sort of internal rules will you set in to ensure that this prosecutor's office, special prosecutor's office, that has received broad support from every Ghanaian, does not suffer the fate that we're currently suffering? Just last week, what happened? A similar thing happened. I'll come to that question of the Auditor General's report, because it's a different question. So how are you going to ensure that your office does not follow that same principle of getting information out that we are investigating this person, this is what the person has done, he's prosecuted, he's maligned, he's insulted, he may be free, but then he's totally finished. If he has business partners, he has no more credibility any longer. How will you be able to convince us that that's what you will do? Will be able to at least do your work and allow the person to have his say in court?
Mr. Chairman, all I can say is that I don't subscribe to people being tried by the press, because every Ghanaian is entitled to presumption of innocence, and it is the responsibility of the prosecution to prove his guilt beyond every reasonable doubt. He has no obligation to prove his innocence. So, if you watch, when I was Deputy Attorney General, Minister of Interior, I scarcely gave press interviews about people's cases because it's not only unethical, it's unfair. And a reputation one destroyed is difficult to retrieve even when you are acquitted. I think that the question you have asked me, I hope the Ghana Journalists Association is taking note. They are a credible professional organization. I'm a lawyer. I'm telling you what we lawyers think about it. I cannot decide for the Association of Journalists. I think that that matter will have to be taken with them because the integrity of everybody is important. My office, I can assure you, will try to protect the people who are investigating until we decide we are going to make a charge and charge the fellow. But you see, we are dealing with law 959, and if you look at it, Parliament decided that the reports should be submitted periodically. When I read it, what is the nature of the report? And when you submit a public report, what happens to the people being investigated? Will it be my office which will be leaking it? Or by complying with law, people who are being investigated are leaked? These are some of the issues we have to think about and see how best we can handle it. But I can assure you that I disagree with people being investigated before they are put to trial, being tried in the press. It is, I believe, unconstitutional.
Mr. Chairman, this is my third question. We have the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. We have the Auditor General and Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. We have the AG itself, the Attorney General, and we have several other laws that seek to fight corruption. In spite of all this, the perception about the average Ghanaian is that we have not succeeded in our fight against corruption. In fact, if there's anything, the view is that corruption is going higher and higher. That's why the President's call to set up a special prosecutor was widely hailed and widely supported. Your nomination was widely supported because the people of Ghana believe, as you rightly stated, that if we were to even cut corruption by half, a lot of the little things that we need to do and we're not getting the resources, we can do them. What are you going to do differently that these bodies have failed and you believe you can succeed?
Well, as I have said, my track record since 1982 is well known that I'm not the one who chooses victims. Anybody who is caught in the net is dealt with. That itself, if I'm approved, serves as a warning to perpetrators of the offense or people who want to perpetrate it, that you better be careful, otherwise you'll be hauled. I have expressed my own doubts whether we will succeed. But I think that if you establish a credible institution with a credible culture, you can reduce corruption significantly. If you establish a credible institution that does not take political instructions in cases, but acts in accordance with the true spirit of the law, the true prosecutorial spirit of dealing with citizens as citizens and only prosecuting them when they have breached the law and it's in the national interest to do so, then many people will stop or reduce their ability to be corrupt. In fact, I had said that I had quoted Linda Ofodekwafu, who even said that if the president failed in dealing away with corruption, Ghana would die. And I said that I don't think Ghana will die as such, but that the revolution of the fight against corruption may have to await another revolution. Because if we don't stop this canker, and we think we can go away with it, people have used it as a ground to destabilize this country in the past. I'm saying that let's stop it before any opportunists would use it.
I think Honorable Helu has asked this question, but for record's sake, I will ask you a similar one. Before your name was brought to the people of Ghana and made public, there were those who had every belief that the president was going to nominate a party loyalist to occupy the position you are occupying now. And in fact, as far as they were concerned, that person was never going to be able to perform effectively and efficiently. Of course, you were a party person, and not just a party person, you were once a vice presidential candidate for a political party. There are people both in the NDC and the MPP who believe that they are not comfortable with you. I want you to look in their face and assure such people that you will do your work with a fear or favor,
Malice or ill will.
with a malice or ill will, with a party consideration, and that the trust that the president and the people of Ghana have in you, when you finish your work, we will all be proud of what you have done. Because, like I said before, possibly if the president had nominated somebody else who even had remote links, maybe with the MPP, things may have been different. Today, you don't just have remote links, you are deep rooted in a political party, the NDC party. So how are you going to assure those who were saying that don't appoint a party loyalist, don't appoint somebody who is a top politician in a political party?
It's not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me make this prologue. Invited to meet the president, I did not know what we were going to discuss. And if anybody had told me that I was going to a meeting in which I would end up accepting to be a special prosecutor, I would have sworn that it's not possible. And when I was writing all these things, I did not consider myself as doing it. And as I said, in 1999, I was nominated to the Supreme Court. I declined it. But you see, when we spoke as honorable men, realizing his commitment, I thought that if we fought corruption all this time, to refuse it, if Ghanaians heard it, will think that then why have you been doing all these things all these years? Right? And I'm saying that any prosecutor who chooses victims because he doesn't like them is not a prosecutor. A prosecutor who leads by the taught tradition of the law will prosecute only serious criminals. And he will do so with a reference to political correlation. And indeed, a prosecutor is not allowed to allow himself to be played politics with. Indeed, read Jackson, Robert Jackson, former Attorney General of the United States and later on Supreme Court Justice. He was one of the prosecutors at the Nuremberg Tribunal. He's written fantastically about prosecutors. The duty of the prosecutors is to do service to the community by making sure crime is reduced. And what I am going to do is to make sure that if the docket, and I'm not going to even do the investigation, I may not even do the prosecution. independent people qualified will bring the docket, or they may not even bring it to me if I've delegated the function. But if the docket comes and is waiting for prosecution, it doesn't matter where you come from, you'll be prosecuted. And I'm saying that politics will not come into it. That I can assure anybody. But you see, what our advice is that the radio, the internet, many people make confessions on them without knowing. They think they're exercising freedom of speech. But you see, you confess, and then you get into the Inyaba situation. And when you do that, you don't blame the public prosecutor. Inyaba was a boy who went to Accra Academy. His father kept money under his bed because he couldn't send it to a bank. The boy had his birthday. He went and picked one envelope and sent his friends to a restaurant, and they ate. When the father came, money was missing. Instead of him to keep quiet, he went to the police station and reported the boy. Right? Then the boy wrote, yes, my father had a slash of money under his bed. I saw it and took it. That is the Inyaba situation. You know? So if you don't go to the police won't pursue you. If you don't talk on the air and said, I did this and this man is not rewarding me even though I funded him. Under section 129, to fund the potential presidential candidate in anticipation that he will give you job is corruption. Read the law. But see, you say it on radio, confess your sins. And then when the special prosecutor says, come in, yes. So I'm saying that let's be careful what we say in radio. You see? Let's be careful.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me take this opportunity to congratulate the nominee for his spirited public service, which he started at a young age of 31. I'm sure it will be an inspiration to many young people. If at 31 he caught the eye of the leader of the nation to appoint him, I'm sure it will be an inspiration. Congratulations for keeping that service to this country at a young age of 31 till today. Congratulations. Now, Mr. Chairman, because of the restrictions we have to work under, I have a number of questions. But before I ask the question, I wish to present to the nominee some few documents, and then I'll ask a question of him to speak to those documents. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll want to give you copies of the documents.
What is it?
Yes, the first
if you're
one,
going to quote from it, unless it is challenged, you can quote from it.
No, I just want him to have it, so that
I have to see it, and then you can go straight and ask the questions.
So the first one is a letter dated 18th January 2012 and signed Martin A.B.K. Amidu, entitled Letter of Apology. And this was to His Excellency Professor Evans Atta-Mills, President of the Republic of Ghana, Office of the President. I want the nominee to confirm, to look at it, and I'll ask the questions later so that he can speak to these documents. The second one is entitled Government Covert Agent. Anas lies gargantuanly to the whole world again, by Martin A.B.K. Amidu. And it's another document I will want him to speak to when I ask my question. And then the other one is Okujetua Ablakwa is uncouth and uncultured in insulting elders by Martin A.B.K. Amidu. Now it's important, before the question, Mr. Chairman.
Member, proceed. Your question has been asked from these documents already, so they are not new. So please proceed with your question. The commentary before, cut them and go straight
to whichever question you want to ask from the document, please.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, the directive principles of state policy under 41, Article 41 of the Constitution says that the exercise and enjoyment of rights and freedoms is inseparable from the performance of duties and obligations, and accordingly, it shall be the duty of every citizen. And my emphasis is on C, so I'll quote C, 41C, to foster national unity and live in harmony with others. Mr. Chairman, also, if you look at section 13(1)(b) of the Office of Special Prosecutor, it talks about similar expectations of the person, to occupy this office. Now, in view of the requirements of the Constitution contained in Article 41C, I wish the nominee to examine the documents that I have referred to and comment honestly on the circumstances in a way to demonstrate that he has a capacity to meet this requirement of living in harmony with others.
Mr. Chairman, I will talk about this letter of apology. This letter of apology, if we had time, I would have produced documents to show how it was procured. This letter of apology was procured from me by the late Kofi Awono, an elder, a former chairman of Council of State. So you will see that at the end of it, I state, and I did that carefully, as it is customary, I have solicited the chairman of the Council of State and Captain Kojo Chikata, retired, as elders, to be kind enough to reiterate my apology to you on my behalf. They asked me to write this letter, and I have said it. Captain Chikata is alive, right? And when Alhaji Mama Idrisu called me and said they wanted this letter, I told him they could sack me. But when the two of them asked me to write this letter, the first letter didn't have Captain Chikata's name. My secretary, Perpetual Achana, who is still working, sent it to Kofi Awono's office. Then he added the Chikata, and when he brought it, the girl typed it and added it there. It was procured by the chairman of the Council of State, who said he was meeting the president that day, and that he and Captain were going to present it to him, and that they had had certain discussions. At the back of my mind, I knew that they were just looking for evidence of an apology and then to do what they wanted to. But my custom respects age. I've worked with these people since '82, right? So I gave them the letter. How come that a confidential letter delivered by the chairman of the Council of State to the president is now making the rounds? But I have already replied to this letter and stated what I'm telling you here today, that it was procured by me by two elders who convinced me that this was not a matter. Just give us the letter and we'll send it. So I wrote it. In any case, for me, I don't see anything wrong when a young person has had a misunderstanding with an elder, somebody who has been his friend for over 35 years, right? And who invites him, come and help me. And there's a breakdown of trust. Just one day, 13th, Mr. Bibaku Mensah said Bibaku Mensah is excellent, he's alive. Until the 13th, the president and myself had never had a problem. So if we had a problem, he's older than me. In Northern Custom, no young man is right. If I'm telling lies, tell me. Even when you are right, you meet elders, you apologize. When you go out, then they tell them you were wrong. We just have to let him apologize. That is what this letter means. You are not now, you know that.
So, Chairman, does he accept responsibility for the letter and apology to which his signature
I
is
am
appended?
saying that I wrote it on, I accept it under the conditions I wrote it, and Captain Chikata is alive. If I'm lying,
yeah.
So the Captain Chikata is alive. He wouldn't deny it. As for the other articles I had written,
Honorable, the main question he asked you was, looking at Article 41 and the requirements, it says that, are you able to say categorically that you can live with other people in harmony?
That I have lived with decent people in harmony for 66 years. I cannot live in harmony with criminals. That I won't lie. I won't lie. But decent, respectable people who will not ask you to do this and then stab you in the back. Those are traitors. I can't live with them. But decent people, I will live with them. Criminals, I can't.
Mr. Speaker, they were, sorry.
Chairman, no, just before he finishes, the Honorable Martin Amidu have held high office in Ghana of Attorney General. There is a letter of apology to which we have his signature as the responsible person. Now, reference to Captain Chikata, he's not before this committee. Reference to Honorable Kofi Awuno of blessed memory is not a reference we can go to. Is he responsible to this letter and its content?
Mr. Chairman, that I wrote it under their persuasion. It's my signature. It's there. It's mine. But the circumstances under which they procured it is reprehensible.
Chairman, I'm raising this because as special prosecutor, we don't want to hear tomorrow that a certain letter signed by him as special prosecutor is procured somewhere. That's the reason. So I want to establish it. So please.
Mr. Chairman, I've said that this is my signature. And I've explained that nothing in this world can be taken out of context. And I've said that this is my signature. And I'm saying that the circumstances under which it was procured, it's not a circumstance in which I would ordinarily have written it. That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm allowed a follow-up because of just a quick one.
Please go on with your questions.
All right. Just, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I presented 3 documents, and I don't think the answer is enough for the other 2, because he said also in answer that he cannot live in harmony with people.
Member, you have asked one question, which he has answered. He's not done on
3 documents to speak to the 3.
Please, he doesn't have to speak to documents. You may quote from them. You may ask questions relating to them. He chose to refer to apology. Then your first question was whether he can live in harmony, reference the Constitution. Proceed with other questions. If you want to speak to any document, please do.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I thank you and I take your guidance. Thank you very much. I will proceed, but if you would permit me to just make an observation, then I'll proceed with the next question. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, please.
Please, observations are not permissible.
Okay.
Please ask questions.
So, are you, honorable nominee, suggesting to this committee then that the late Professor Mills, Anas Amiriao Anas, and Honorable Samuel Kujeto Ablakwa, per the articles I have shown you, were criminals, and that is why you haven't, or you were not in harmony with them, as evidenced in these documents? Thank you.
I have never made any such suggestion. No way.
All right, I will move on to Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman. Chapter 24 of the 1992 Constitution still deals with Code of Conduct for Public Officers. Now, Mr. Speaker, I refer precisely to Article 284 which reads, "A public officer shall not put himself in a position where his personal interest conflicts or is likely to conflict with the performance of the functions of his office." Unquote. Quote and unquote. Also, Mr. Chairman, the independence and impartiality of the office the nominee seeks for approval for is implicit in clause 72A of the OSP Act 959, when in part it states that a member of the board shall not engage in conduct or an activity that may undermine the integrity, independence, and impartiality of the office. Mr. Chairman, answering questions here, the nominee has also talked about how he is expected to be impartial. Now, I make reference to an article the nominee wrote recently. It is entitled President John Mahama's Last Midnight Appointments, Contracts and Recruitments, and dated 21st December 2016. Now, I'll just quote portions and put my question. The Luther John Mahama government promised a smooth transition as though he had an option in the matter. The spin is in the blood of the Luther government, which loots and spins the plundering of the public purse for likes of Wyoming, Waterville, and others, and inflates contract prices to the detriment of the public purse. One would have thought that the massive defeat of the Luther government, never witnessed in the annals of Ghanaian history, will make it circumspect. And the last quotation, and in fact, if you read through this article, every reference to the NDC government at the time is qualified with Luther government. Ghana is worth dying for, and so fellow citizens, speak up and defend your 7th December votes by not allowing this Luther government to deliberately make it impossible. Mr. Chairman, the question is, by this posture that is demonstrable partiality, will the nominee consider himself an impartial candidate for this office, and will you not be compromising the independence and impartiality required of the holder of this office?
Chairman, at the time the nominee wrote that article, the nominee was a constitutional defense activist, and he wrote that article pursuant to Article 3, which even enjoins that if any action or activity may even lead to the abrogation or suspension of the Constitution, you are at liberty to even use arms and force to stop it. Right? So that's the context in which that letter must be looked at. And nobody can be accused when he is exercising his right as a citizen to defend the Constitution of partiality. I was defending the Constitution. I had to do it as robustly as I could. As special prosecutor, I have to exercise neutrality, and that's what I'm going to do. You know, we have politicians who have gone to the highest bench. They haven't exhibited politics in that bench. General secretaries of parties are now sitting there. They haven't exhibited any partiality. So why will I, a constitutional activist, defending the Constitution pursuant to Article 3, go and be biased when there's no crime? I mean, the whole world will see, lawyers will see that I am being biased. The law is not something you can take for a ride. It's a community where defense counsel, other lawyers reading it, will know that you are not acting well. And that is why even at the last bar conference, the Bar Association offered me the chance to be a guest speaker. Unfortunately, I was going to London. The community of Bar Association will never invite you as a guest speaker if you are a person who wantonly shows partiality as a lawyer. But as a constitutional defense advocate, I will have to be partial because I have to stop what I think is against the Constitution. And those are why the words are very strong. You see, and that's why I said Ghanaians should defend, because the Constitution says as citizens we should defend. So I was asking Ghanaians, to exercise a constitutional right. You can't accuse me for undertaking my rights under the Constitution unless you want to suppress my own political activity as prohibited by Article 3(2).
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Sherman. Well taken. Now let's look at some legal rulings from our courts. And because you have been an active player in that field, I will seek your intelligent assessment of two situations. You challenged the decision of the state to pay judgment debt to Mr. Alfred Agbesiwoyomi because, in your view, the agreements under which the judgment debts were paid were unconstitutional for lack of ratification or approval by Parliament, therefore unenforceable. Now, why do you think in a similar case involving the Gitmo 2, the court directed the government to either return the two suspects or take the agreement to Parliament for ratification when the latter was not an option in the Wayomi case you took to court?
Let me be honest with you. The Wayomi case, I did the case and saw how the order of the court for refund was being hedged around all the time. So I can speak about that. This Gitmo 2, I have not even seen the judgment. Is it reported? Is it reported? I don't know. But I haven't seen it. And I will not comment on something I have not seen. You know. Honorable Barbara, I see.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, Mr. Martin Amidu. I am impressed looking at your background, from a very humble background, and I believe that young people are looking up to you, that irrespective of your background, the school that you attend, you can make it in life. So congratulations. Mr. Amidu, Mr. Chairman, can you share in all honesty the circumstances of you being asked to step aside as Attorney General by the then President, Professor John Evans Atta Mills, as some quarters are asserting that the ground for your dismissal is insubordination? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can assure you that I was not dismissed for insubordination. Indeed, there is a consent judgment filed in the High Court which shows that the termination of my appointment was wrongful and the government was ordered to pay me 1 month's. I agreed to it. I didn't want to pull this thing. So when they suggested 1 year's salary, I said, okay, it's all right. It's not the money I'm needing, it's the principle. So the whole idea about me being sacked and all that, there is a court judgment. And indeed, the government before it's left was pulling its legs from paying my benefits. And the present government, if they paid at the last end, before they even paid some of it, my interests are still piling. My official card since 2012, the court ordered it. It's still hanging there. But I'm following it. So anybody who gives the impression that I was dismissed for insubordination should go to the court and read the judgment and the terms of settlement. And there's a new Attorney General who should be able to make that available. So don't let us. And you see, let me say one thing. Professor Mills was a very close friend, and I was a very close confidant and advisor. And I'm saying that His Excellency Sir Bibaku Mensah, his secretary, and Colonel Lawson will tell you that there is no week he doesn't send for me specifically until the 13th, whom I don't know who asked him to call me and my brother's wife and put those questions to me. That's when I thought there was breach of trust. So I told him, I won't serve you again. I said it, that there's a breach of trust. You asked me to come as a friend. If you don't trust me again, I won't serve you again. And then the issue went on. Go and come at 3 o'clock. I said I will send my resignation letter the moment I get to my office. His Excellency said, Mensah speaks in Hausa. I'm your senior brother. Come back. So I come back. Captain Chikata comes, takes me into a room. How can we seniors be here and you are leaving us and going? Go and collect the money. So I go to court on the 16th. That's how come this letter eventually came. And then on the 19th, they announced that they had terminated my appointment. Then somebody goes to say I was terminated for misconduct. So I went to court. That's the situation. Bibakun is alive. He was ambassador to the Vatican, right? He was there. Martin Mills was there. Betty Moldy Drusu was there. I was there. And Betty Mold's husband and myself continue talking. I have the emails here. Don't let us go there.
Thank you.
And
Don't go there again.
That is why I wrote a tribute when Prof died. It pained me he died. And now I will tell those of you who are doubting that Prof and me were very close. Even after the event, Prof told people what he thought about being pressured to let me go.
Barbara, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The story is there was pressure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On the 4th day of December 2017, you wrote and posted on the internet an article. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On the 4th of December 2017, you wrote and posted on the internet an article entitled Wayomi's Suspected Crimes and All the Missing Link. I hope you remember. It's a Martin Amidu. What is the missing link in what you call the Wayomi's crimes? And what do you intend doing about it when Parliament approves your nomination? Thank you very much.
Indeed, that article, my comrade Kokubaku, we've been comrades since the revolutionary times. Even though he fell out with the revolution, I was still close to him. Kwesi Pratt and all those people. He raised the issue of the missing link, right? And then I wrote my article to support the missing link. Because as Attorney General, I had said that Wayome cannot be prosecuted alone, and that all his accomplices must be prosecuted. Indeed, when we met in my office on the 13th of January, the attorneys who are listening, unfortunately Gertrude DPP is dead, but the other lawyers and then Gezi and Co, who are listening, in the conference room, they all agreed that part of the fault is from this house, right? So we said that.
Nominate this house as in Parliament or
no, the Attorney General's department.
Very well.
So if we are going to prosecute, we should prosecute everybody involved and not Wayome alone. That was one of the reasons, why the Hundrums hunted me, so that they will not be prosecuted. So Wayome alone was prosecuted. And if you remember, in the judgment, the judge said that Wayome could not be prosecuted alone, and that those who acted with him were not brought. So Ajet Nasam, who was proved to be a corrupt judge later, acquitted Wayome. If I had prosecuted that case together with the accomplices, the result will be different. And my perception is that the prosecution was bungled to get that guy out. I mean, I was acting as Attorney General, and the facts are there, the files are there. I wasn't making it up myself. The lawyers are still in the Attorney General's department.
Yes,
so if I come into office and somebody comes to make a complaint and can substantiate it that there was a residual offense, it is not me who is going to investigate it. It's not me who is going to prosecute it. If there is a strong case, why not? There's no statute of limitation to crime.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Amidu, I know you are very passionate, fighting, corruption. But do you think that as a country we'll be able to fight or eradicate corruption completely or from the system?
No, Madam. Mr. Chairman, corruption, President Kufuor told all of us that it started from Adam. It's even in the US, in Britain, in all those advanced countries, there's petty corruption, but the level and magnitude is the biggest problem. You see, during the PNDC, all of us were afraid because if you were a PNDC secretary and you were caught, you were for the gallows. So it didn't happen. You remember the first parliament, we bought them second-hand cars and they accepted it. But you see, the situation has to be dealt with. It has to be dealt with. And that is why I'm saying the president, realizing that if he doesn't deal with it now, we will have a bigger problem, decided that, well, Martin, come and help do it. And I'm saying I'll do it fairly and impartially.
Honorable nominee, my attention has been drawn to some unparliamentary language, hoodlums.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Barbara, you're done now.
Last one.
Well, I usually allow follow-ups.
Follow-up.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Amidu, I know the president is very confident. His Excellency Nana Adjudant Akufo-Addo is very confident that you'll be able to deliver. I want to know from you what legacy you'd want to leave and you would be remembered for. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, let me be very humble to tell you that I accepted the nomination to try. I didn't accept the nomination on the grounds that I will succeed. I accepted to try. And that's what I'm going to do. Because I'm just one person. My deputies' integrity and honesty will be important. The integrity and honesty of my staff will be important. They are going to be adults I didn't give birth to. They would have had several socializations I didn't take part to, as Honorable Minority Leader, as a sociologist knows. But I'm going to try to work with them, and because of my example leadership, hoping that they will all let us work as a team in the honest spirit of achieving something. I think that...
Chairman, I've heard the nominee acknowledge that he'll be working through a board. I've heard your deputy, your staff. What about your board?
The board that will be matters of policy, but they will not decide for us our investigations and prosecutions. That will be to interfere into my independence.
What about the Attorney General?
The Attorney General will be prosecuting under her authority. That doesn't mean that she would instruct us who to prosecute and who not to prosecute.
Chairman, I'm compelled, just Barbara, before you are done, I'm compelled to go to Act 959, and for the nominees, if you follow through the law, functions of the board is not limited to policy. It's in addition, and I'm reading C, D, E, and F. Even though F supports your position, policy matter. Advise the special prosecutor on the recruitment and selection of the secretary and other staff. Develop and monitor implementation of a code of conduct for staff of the office, and facilitate cooperation between the office and relevant national investigative bodies such as IOCO and SHRI. So beyond policy, what role will be your board? I note with satisfaction that you say you are just one strong individual, but you need the support of your board to succeed. And Chairman, once I have this floor, let me render...
No, it's not for you.
No. Just one issue. When I raise the issue of the Bulisa Way, a certain impression has been created publicly. I use it advisedly as a cultural joke, which is the case, to inspire humor into the debate, which I shared politely even with the chairman before I came on. Any person feeling offended, I regret it and I retract. I thank you. But it was used strictly in the cultural sense of a joke, of the joking relationship established within Northern Ghana and Northern culture. But to my question, your board.
Mr. Chairman, I will say that the relationship, the bull says, I'll leave it, but I have a different view, as I've said already, you know. But my board, as I said, all those recruitment issues and all that, if you look at policy generally, it all comes under it. And definitely we'll interview staff and all that. But the law also says that in the day-to-day performance of the functions of the special prosecutor, he will not be under the direction or control of any person. But you also look at the way you form the board, and you would see that there is a little bit of a problem there. But I think that we can still work it out. When the whole board is composed, I think we'll be able to find a working way, because this law must work. Doesn't matter what the problems are. We are human beings. It's important to fight corruption. We will not be looking at what lapses in the law there are. I am prepared to work with the board to make sure that the institution is set up. But I'm not going to allow the board to usurp my investigatory and prosecutorial functions which have been given to me. As the article I sent out shows, I sent out on the net shows, even in the United States, the Attorney General doesn't instruct the special prosecutor. Mueller is there. But you realize that when the Attorney General tries to interfere, the nation rises up. And I'm expecting Ghanaians who are supporting this appointment to behave like the Americans are behaving. So to be our backbone when politicians want to interfere with our independence. So that's the situation. So I don't see any conflict between the board and my office. You know, I think that it is doable, it is workable, and we will go on well.
Chairman, before the Honorable Okujeto, the nominee have just stated a very important historical fact of America and Mueller. Mueller is contemporary. That's 21st century, 2016 and 17. But if Ghana was to learn, I appreciate the point you are making, that we need to learn from best practice. If you go back to Watergate scandal in 1978, between President Richard Nixon, when Nixon appointed Cox, Nixon appointed Richardson Attorney General, then subsequently Cox as Special Prosecutor. You don't think that Ghana may have to go through some experience just like the Americans did in the 70s before the improved special counsel that they have today?
Mr. Chairman, I think that we learn as a nation, we learn from other nations' experiences. As you said, Richardson was Attorney General. He appointed Cox as Special Prosecutor. In his parliamentary approval like mine, he promised Parliament that he will not fire Cox. Then Nixon directs him to fire him, so he resigns. Nixon directs his deputy to fire him, so he resigns. It was only Brock who agreed to fire Nixon, to fire Cox. And when he did that, the whole Congress was up in arms. The whole nation was up in arms. That is what brought the Ethics in Governance Act 1974 and made it impossible for the special prosecutor to be dismissed. So that lesson is there for us to learn. And I'm hoping that with an eminent constitutional lawyer as president, I mean, I should think that he should know that already. And maybe that's why he decided that I should come and do it, so that I can maybe take the bullet but say it won't be done. I don't know.
Chairman, to the nominee, President, eminent constitutional lawyer, Special Prosecutor, eminent constitutional lawyer, what is wrong with the board? as you suggested. The board, you said in your reaction, you gave us an indication. This parliament, our committee makes recommendations. When you looked at the composition of the board, you went close to saying that look at the board, we'll work with it. Is there something wrong that you want parliament to take note of and to look at?
No. What I'm saying is that we will work with the board. I don't think it will be fair for me. When I meet the board the first time, I'll tell them what I think our problem is. And then we can collectively take it. I won't sit here and be talking about any lacuna in the law when they are absent. So if you bear with me, when I have met them and we have resolved the lacuna and we are moving, I will tell the public how we have managed it. But to do it here will be a little bit jumping the boat.
Very well. Did you finish asking your question? Okay. Honorable, no, you are done. Sorry, it's the turn of the minority.
I'm most grateful, Mr. Chairman. The Honorable Martin Amidu did say earlier, when you were asked about the assignment you were given to investigate the then Social Security Bank Limited, July 1988 to September 1988. For our records, did I hear you say that you were the only person of integrity found at the time to do the work?
I didn't say that. I said I was in the Volta region. And the chairman of the PNDC was looking for the hard-nosed man. Normally, because I see things others don't see, because of my capabilities in investigation. You know what I mean? And all those who know me, whether police, commissioner, CID, DPP, who have worked with me, know that I have a knack which is God-gifted. So he was looking for the hard-nosed man, and that was me. So he gave me that additional responsibility instead of appointing somebody from Accra. At that time, my friend there was in Revenue Commission, CVC, So I came and did the job, and I did it with a fear of favor. I'm not saying that I was the only honest person in the regime. Otherwise, we wouldn't have traveled that long from 82 and safely, bagged the ship on 7th January 1993. We couldn't have done that. One man, the chairman himself had more integrity than me. That's why he was able to control the ship of state to a successful landing.
Thank you very much. I want us to come to Section 2 of the Act, the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959. There has been a lot of focus on investigation and prosecution, but there is a very important function assigned by Parliament under the object of the office. If you look at 2C, it says, take steps to prevent corruption. Because I believe that we should be interested in improving systems, making it difficult and impossible as much as possible for people to engage in corruption. We should not be scrambling around when the horses have bolted and then we are trying to prosecute people and retrieve stolen and stashed away resources. Can you share with this committee your vision, your ideas for preventing corruption as Section 2C of the Act stipulates?
I mean, I've already said that one of our duties will be preventative, and good investigation, good prosecution for once. Education also acts as a preventative function. Within security and intelligence, there are certain methods you have to put in place to curb the loopholes. I cannot discuss them until I'm approved and appointed, and that one will maybe not be known to the public. because if it's known to the public, then there will be no need putting them in place. But we will put in place mechanisms that will make the offenses we are talking about unattractive to anybody who wants to commit them. So I can assure you that indeed the preventive measure is one of the most important measures the law has given. If you can prevent it, you save the whole nation. And the nation will have to be sensitized. When we begin educating the public on what corruption is, we will see that the assumptions, the things we take for granted, are things which really are prohibited by law. And we hope that can be a beginning. And we can do something using methods which other countries have used, but which cannot be disclosed publicly.
Mr. Chairman, can we come to your critique of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Bill 2017 by Martin A.B.K. Amidu, signed on the 6th of September 2017. You have stated here, time without number, that you are a man of principle. When you are being asked to bend your principles, you will better walk away. You will not allow your principles to be compromised. I have carefully read the rather erudite critique that this 25-pager offers, and I come across four major concerns you raise that you expected that the final output, the final Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017 will have addressed. First, you made a point that fundamentally you do not think that this office is even needed in the first place, and that Article 88 is adequate, that we need an Attorney General of integrity. That has not happened. Secondly, you make the point that the Special Prosecutor should not be accountable to a board. But if you read Section 14.1 of the Act, which has been assented to by the President, it says the Special Prosecutor is accountable to the board in the performance of the functions under this Act. You have said that that is a bureaucratic interference with your work and your independence. You also complain about the 15 years. Yes, I want.
He will ask a question after he has recounted this. I'll allow him one question. Now, this is just his prelim. I mean, on this one.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that there are four major issues you raise in your critique. That the Office of the Special Prosecutor is not necessary.
So you may now ask
that the board is not necessary. You talked about the 15 years, the qualification of the Special Prosecutor being a disincentive. You thought that it was too low. But even in the Act, what has been finally approved is 12 years. Then finally, you said you are opposed to the President appointing the staff at the Office of Special Prosecutor, that the Special Prosecutor should be allowed to appoint people that he can work with. But in this Act, Section 21 of this Act, it is the President that's going to appoint this Act. And in your own words, quote, you said, this undermines the Special Prosecutor with politically minded persons, unquote. All of these are in this Act. You have been saying you are a man of principle. Why are you here? Why are you accepting this appointment with all these impediments you have complained about?
Mr. Chairman, it is not true to say that I said that without the Attorney General being allowed to prosecute the crimes, as an Office of Special Prosecutor is not necessary. I have quoted previously, if the Honorable Questioner was listening, that the moral compass and integrity of the President, and that shows that I stated clearly that this is a President who has gone to elections and won on the basis of a promise, and that it is doable. So to quote out of context is a little bit disconcerting for me, Mr. Chairman, because I have read a number of times that I have said it is doable. And I have said that when the president called me first, he said, Martin, I wish the attorney generals could do this, but you know that the public doesn't believe in them. So I promised to do this thing, and we have to do it. Right? I agreed with him. You know what I mean? And therefore, when he said, look at it, the board, I'm telling you that the definition of accountable and interpretation of accountable by law doesn't mean that the board is going to push you around. I've cited 2 cases in my critique, which if you read, explicates what under authority is. That's why I said it should be under the authority of the Attorney General. From the perspective of my understanding, I said that the board, the special prosecutor ought not to be accountable to a board because she's going to work under the authority of the Attorney General. The Attorney General has a legal counsel place, and so to impose another board over the special prosecutor, who is just going to do a mere prosecutorial function, will be added bureaucracy. This parliament has decided that it needs a board, right? I was giving a critique of my opinion. This parliament has decided it needs a board. It's put the board in a certain way. I have looked at it carefully. I think that it is workable. I have told you that I agree entirely that we must not throw the water away with the dirty water away with the baby. That's more fundamental to me than anything else. You know, so that is the context in which you are seeing the contradictions. But to me, as long as we can stop the leakages and seepages, which no president has tried to do before, I'll go ahead with him. That is the more fundamental principle, to stop corruption, not to postpone it. And I think that is more supreme. That is why I agreed to do it for him. And as I told you, I didn't think I'll ever accept this job. You see, I'm not bothered about the Court of Appeal judge. I was to go to the Supreme Court, not because of them. I'm doing this job for the love of making sure that people of this country have a better deal and stop the political elite and establishment from siphoning the money of this country abroad. That's why I'm here.
Sammy, yes. Chairman, did I just hear the nominee say no president, no president? Are you suggesting that there's been no attempt or effort by any president to fight corruption in this country?
I don't know the context in which you are quoting me. No president has passed the Special Prosecutors Act. That's what I mean. And if there is one, show me.
Mr. Chairman, I will be moving to my last but one question now. I just thought that the Honorable Martin Amidu will have used his leverage with the President to help us have a more biting and stronger office of the Special Prosecutor Act in line with his own critique. But I will move on. If you can please come with me to Article 296 of the Constitution of Ghana. It reads, where in this Constitution or in any other law discretionary power is vested in any person or authority, A, that discretionary power shall be deemed to imply a duty to be fair and candid. A duty to be fair and candid, emphasis mine. B, the exercise of the discretionary power shall not be arbitrary, capricious, or biased, either by resentment, prejudice, or personal dislike, and shall be in accordance with due process of law, unquote. Mr. Chairman, I have a number of articles that the Honorable nominee has authored. I have here the 8 December 2016 congratulatory message to President-elect Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. In the second paragraph, you write, quote, changing a government under which the mass of ordinary people were unnecessarily and needlessly burdened over the years under the yoke of massive and pervasive corruption deliberate oligarchic mismanagement of abundant natural resources, party, political, and ethnic cronyism, and abject ineptitude peacefully through the ballot box is a feat worthy of emulation by other citizens of the West African subcontinent, in particular Africa in general. Then there is this second article dated 1st August 2017 under the caption Yaudonko's whining is karma for abuse of the Constitution as a public officer by Martin A.B.K. Amidu. If I'll quote your last paragraph, you write, I have no tears for your egg. Stop whining for the respectful treatment from the police when you refuse to grant your fellow citizens similar respect when you had the opportunity to serve our motherland Ghana. Yao. But in these cases, we still have judgment here, karma. And I've gone through this 4-page article. You appear to be gloating at the woes of Mr. Yaudonko, the former National Security Coordinator. If I'll quote from the last article I have here, just because of time, the 9th January 2017 article under the caption, the 7th Parliament must restore the confidence of citizens in the honor and integrity of the legislature, by Martin A.B.K. Amidu. You wrote, and I quote, unlike previous elections in the annals of our history, the pivotal and critical issues were between electing a corrupt, bankrupt, inept, incompetent, abusive, impudent, and looter incumbent government, and electing one of the contesting candidates dedicated to fighting all these unconstitutional, capricious evils and protecting the national purse. The massive trashing of the incumbent looter government of John Dramani Mahama. May God never give Ghana a corrupt and looter president like him again, unquote. These are your words. Article 296 talks about being fair, being candid, not being driven by resentment. I see a lot of resentment in your articles. Can you, in all true conscience, tell the people of this country and this committee that you are not biased, you are not capricious, and you are not out to do a hatchet job for someone, as some sections of the society believe?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I've been called glutton, which normally I would not accept from anybody, but he has a privilege against another citizen, and he chooses to use those epithets on him. That's okay. Let me say that I have no leverage whatsoever over President Akufo-Addo. I never met him since we stopped going to court. I've never met him or spoken to him. The only day I saw him was when he came to swear in the Chief Justice, the new Chief Justice. He was going around greeting lawyers, and he shook my hand. Amidu, how are you? Fine. And he passed. The next time I met him was when he invited me to give me this nomination. I have not seen him since then. I have not spoken to him. So I have no leverage. The impression being created is erroneous, and it ought not to be peddled. You see, there is no evidence to support this statement you've made. I have stated that as a constitutional defense advocate, I fight for the people of Ghana using all the arsenals at my disposal. But you see, the questions you have asked me have failed to tell the other side of the story. The articles I have written against the MPP government and the Speaker, including the Honorable Chairman of the committee, when Honorable Mama Ayara got the problems, the things I wrote about him, which was in favor of the NDC, you've gloated over it. When I asked whether the Speaker was the enforcer of the law, you've gloated over it. You know, I've written things against all the political divides in defense of the Constitution. So if I'm going to be, you are saying that because I've written against the pond, a crocodile from the pond in which I come from, I cannot be impartial. What of those in the pond I don't come from? I am saying that the position of special prosecutor is a prosecutorial position, and I stopped practicing law and was doing constitutional defense. Now I'm going back to the practice of law. I will live by the ethics of the legal profession and the code of conduct of the Constitution. And I know better the discretion of the prosecutor because I've practiced it as Deputy Attorney General for upwards of 12 years. And I was Attorney General for 1 year. Who else in this country will know it better than me? I'm the longest serving Deputy Attorney General. So I know what it means to be in power. I'm telling you, the fraternity of law is not a sleeping fraternity that's going to close his eye to Martin Amidu taking victims for his own personal aggrandizement. They are there as watchdogs. And I've lectured on ethics to law students, and I've told them, watch out. Any lawyer who does that is not worth the name. I'm not going to be a special prosecutor who will go into history as being vindictive. I will not.
Sorry, Sammy, you're done.
No, this is my last question now.
No,
that was the agreement, that this will be my last question. I'm grateful, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my final question comes from the book authored by Dr. Obed-Yao Asamoah, and the Honorable nominee just talked about the many years he's been Attorney General. For many years, he was the deputy to the venerable and respected Dr. Obed-Yao Asamoah. In this widely acclaimed and fascinating book titled The Political History of Ghana, 1950 to 2013, The Experience of a Nonconformist, on page 465, Dr. Yao Obed Asamoah had this to say about you. Page 465. 465. Dr. Obed Asamoah said, quote, "In the end, Professor Mills chose as his running mate, my deputy, at the Ministry of Justice, Martin Amidu, in a surprise and unproductive move," unquote. Surprise and unproductive move. In the next paragraph, he writes, "In my mind, I did not think that Martin Amidu would be beneficial to the ticket," unquote. I'm sure that you are aware of this publication. This was your boss for many years. You've talked about us checking with the people you have worked with to vouch for your credibility and your hard work and impartiality, which I am not saying is in doubt at this point. But how do you respond to your boss passing such a damning verdict on your selection as running mate of then candidate Mills?
Mr. Chairman, in the first place, Dr. Asamoah is not my boss.
Honorable Oni, hold on. If you wish to answer, fine. But I would have...
let me answer him.
Very well.
Dr. Asamoah is not my boss. He did not pay my fees through law school. He was called to the bar. I was called to the bar. He didn't appoint me Deputy Attorney General. I was appointed Deputy Attorney General before he came there. And I served on the Akins, Nanatano, Mr. Forson came for 6 months before he was asked to act, right? And we are colleagues, except that he was the Attorney General and I was the deputy. And therefore I knew my place and worked with him. That doesn't make him my boss. You see, so you are reading a self-serving book in which he wanted to be the vice presidential candidate. He was bypassed. The candidate saw in his deputy more competence, right, and excellence than him. Then he writes a book, and he writes this thing, and you are coming to read it to the whole public. I've never read that book. I've heard about it, but see, you have raised it in public. You see, you are reading a self-serving statement when your own presidential candidate and later president saw me as a more preferred candidate than him. And in any case, the law report demonstrates that while he was doing that, I was going to court. He didn't train me. So don't, and if you say he is erudic, well, that's your comment. But you see, I regret that you've brought his book and you want to knock my head against his. In his recent interview to MFA Apau, He described me as a person of honesty. You see, but you see, you people, you will collapse your old people by reading these things. Then I'll react this way. Dr. Sabwa calls me. Dr. Sabwa calls me. Yes. Even when I was Attorney General. Yes. And even when he was accused, he called me to find out, did it happen? And then I told him it didn't happen. So I'm on good terms with him. So if because of vetting we are doing this, I don't think it's good. You know, I would have let the question pass, but the public will understand it otherwise. Indeed, Professor, he and my senior brother Elijah Mamedus were looking for it. And then when Prof gave it to me, I told him, I will not accept a position which my senior brother was looking for unless he gives his blessing. I asked him first, have you told Dr. Sama? He said yes. He's supposed to have been with me here to announce it to you. But he said I can go ahead. I asked him, did you tell Elijah Mamedrusu? He said no. I said, that's my senior brother. I can't take a position he was looking for. So if you want, after he persuaded me, I said, well, then you have to seek Elijah's concurrence. I was driving myself. I drove to Elijah's house, pointed to his house. Prof went and saw him. Asked Elijah, he's alive, he's not dead. Before I accepted the position. So my customary behavior with elders is special. And I wouldn't have liked to talk about Dr. Sama. You've put temptation in my path. Unfortunately, unlike Justice Philip Archer, I took it. But I'm sorry to make those comments about him.
Chairman, I'm only doing my job. Thank you very much.
Honorable Ogudedo, you're done, please. And I can't say, I mean, I would have wished that we didn't go there, but I think we would, I'll take Atachia and then we'll break for lunch because we can continue, but the candidate needs a break to stretch his legs, and so we will take Atachia and then we'll break for lunch and come back. So please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good job.
And I'm grateful for this opportunity. Most learned senior, this session, I'm amazed at your energies, your high level of energies, and the fact that you are not drinking water. And I'll just ask just 3 questions and leave you. It will be short. Yeah, Senior, if you pay regard to the long title of Act 959, Mr. Chairman, if I have your permission, I'd like to quote it. An act to establish the office of the Special Prosecutor as a specialized agency to investigate specific cases of alleged or suspected corruption and corruption-related offenses involving public officers and politically exposed persons in the performance of their functions, as well as persons in the private sector involved in the commission of the alleged or suspected corruption and corruption-related offenses. Prosecute these offenses on the authority of the Attorney General and provide for related matters. Nominee, my chief concern is the suspected corruption. And because of you've been given powers to investigate, my concern is this, that because you are also supposed to look at suspected corruption or alleged corruption, the office could be so inundated with these allegations. And because sometimes you could be politically motivated to the point that you trying to sift the wheat from the chaff will take all your energies and you will have no time to do the actual job. Do you envisage a situation in which there's an overload of cases of suspected corruption, and then before you finish all of them, I mean, you don't even have the space to do the real job?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The person who complains has to adduce credible evidence. So if you come to make a complaint, the act shows how a complaint will be made. I am sure there will be an office which will establish when the institution comes into being. So there will be a location where you go and make a formal complaint, or if you send a letter, there's an officer who will take it and who may invite you and initiate the investigations. But honorable member will agree with me that even in the criminal code, the police investigate reasonable suspicion of commission of offenses. And that's the context in which I will look at this. If you just write a letter which is not reasonable, it will be a waste of resources to try to investigate it. So anybody writing a letter should write a letter which is credible and therefore can lead to investigations. I mean, we are not going to be a rumor mill. If I am approved, collecting rumors. And I think that we can sift them. And since we will have investigators and prosecutors who may do the bulk of the work, and we will be supervising, I am believing that we will do our best to handle it. Of course, at the beginning, people may inundate us, but as time goes on, when they see the parameters within which we work, they may stop doing that.
I'm grateful for your answer. Sifting the wheat from the chaff is a real job. Now let me ask you this question. If you pay regard to the remit of the law, can you envisage a situation in which a case commenced by you could be frustrated by a nolle prosequi from the Attorney General? Oh, Senior.
I don't know.
Chairman, I think I don't think you should answer. Can he envisage? That's hypothetical, please. Our rules do not permit hypothetical and opinion. You're such a senior lawyer that I know you can reframe your question.
I'm grateful. If you look at the spirit and tenor of Office of the Special Prosecutor Act, 2017 Act 959, is there a space in the law in which prosecutions from your outfit could be interfered with through nolle prosequis from the Attorney General? Senior, is it a fair question?
I think that in all sincerity, the Attorney General is normally a lawyer of good standing. And speaking as a lawyer, I don't see the situation where any Attorney General will enter a nolle prosequi in a case being prosecuted by an independent special prosecutor without the knowledge of that fellow. That's why there must be a working relationship that avoids it. And I don't think that will happen. I don't foresee it. In any case, that is why the President Trump has been said he wants to dismiss Mueller. He's been on the news, but he is finding it almost impossible because of the public reaction that will happen. And I believe anybody who wants to bypass the special prosecutor to do something will think about public opinion. And I don't even think that the Attorney General will do that without consultation. I can't foresee it because it's not done among lawyers. Lawyers who are lawyers.
Chairman, are there lawyers who are carpenters?
There are lawyers who are not lawyers.
Yes, I don't know about that, yeah.
Yes, Leonard Senior, I think you are very prolific when it comes to writing of articles. And I also make reference to an article you posted on the net dated the 17th of November 2013. And you could feel the fire of the article that some dubious payments were made to Waterville, which made Ghana poorer by 25 million euros. And then Isophoton, which emptied our coffers in the huge sum of United States dollars, 325 million. And I got the impression that in the article, the Woyomo case seems to have dwarfed the publicity of these two serious cases.
Do you see Waterville and Isophoton payments having criminal dimensions? And if your answer is yes, and when you are approved, will these cases be uppermost in your list of cases you want to prosecute?
Not a question, Mr. Chairman, I can answer. I dealt with these cases a very long time ago. And unless I refresh my memory fully on them, I don't want to commit myself to anything. In any case, those cases have been pending for a very long time. And I believe if it's been looked at, they will be looked at. I don't think that they may necessarily have to be the special prosecutor's baby. Even though if there are issues of corruption and a proper complaint is made, they'll be looked at. But that it doesn't follow that if they don't meet the prosecutorial standard, we will do anything about it.
Thank you, honorable members. We will suspend sitting for 1 hour. That's 4 o'clock exactly. Whoever is here, I will start. 4 o'clock exactly. Whoever is here, I will start.